Heartwarming, pregnant maid faints in Millionaire's mansion. Discover the amazing secret she hid. Emma stood in the expansive foyer of Mr. Harrington's mansion, her heart pounding like a drum. The glimmering chandeliers above reminded her of the weight she carried, the anticipation of her first child combined with the grind of 2 jobs. She passed by polished marble floors and luxurious drapes, each step laced with the hope of a better life for her baby. But the shadow of her responsibilities loomed larger than the grand staircase before her, and soon, the ground began to sway beneath her. In a dizzy whirl, she collapsed, her body meeting the intricate rug with a soft thud. Darkness enveloped her, the world of wealth fading into silence. When she awakened, the golden aesthetics of the mansion felt suffocating, each breath thick with the scent of polished wood and expensive perfume. She blinked against the brightness to find Mr. Harrington, a self-made millionaire, kneeling beside her, fear etched into his sharp features. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice tight and urgent. Pulling herself up with shaky hands, Emma felt tears prick at her eyes. "I'm fine," she whispered, but the words felt false. Little did he know, this fainting spell held more than just a fall, it was a breaking point for both of them. As the days moved on, Emma couldn't shake the feeling of despair, or the gut-wrenching fear that began to creep in. While she dusted the delicate porcelain figurines and straightened the pristine linens, the whispers of the future filled her head. What if Mr. Harrington laid off staff? She overheard fragments of his conversations tightening finances and cutting costs, and her heart sank. The job she needed most felt as precarious as the branches above her when the winds began to howl. In a moment of overwhelming vulnerability, she found herself standing face to face with Mr. Harrington, determination coursing through her veins. "You can't do this," she said, the words spilling out like a confession. She watched as his demeanor shifted, surprise swimming in his eyes. "What do you know about my situation?" he replied, the icy tone of his wealth creeping back. "It doesn't matter where we stand. I have a child to think about," she said, her voice shaking. "You were once on the ground floor too, weren't you?" Suddenly, the affluent man started to reveal the cracks in his armor. He spoke of lost dreams and endless sacrifices, mirroring her own struggles in unexpected ways. It was as if a door opened, their lives converging in that moment. A young man who had once faced the same battles was now a titan, yet still teetering on the brink of uncertainty. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. With vulnerability hanging in the air, Emma felt the invisible chains of her social status begin to loosen. Their shared experiences ignited a sense of camaraderie that hadn't existed moments before. As they spoke, she learned more about his history, a past soaked in sweat and tears, reminding her of the sweat on her own brow. But just as hope began to burgeon, a shocking secret from Mr. Harrington's past floated to the surface, hinting at something that could change everything. Emma's heart raced as she faced the choice before her, to remain silent or to uncover a truth tied to their threads of fate. With fate clasping at her heart, she realized her next move could either set her free or plunge her deeper into the struggles she was desperate to escape. Would she harness this newfound understanding to advocate for herself and her fellow workers, or would she choose to protect the delicate balance of their worlds? The walls of the mansion felt closing, the stakes rising, and the story had only just begun. Emma stood there, wrestling the weight of his words within her, unsure of the path she wanted to take. The mansion that had felt cold and imposing now hummed with tension, and the air seemed thick with unspoken truths. Mr. Harrington looked at her with a mix of vulnerability and guardedness, as if they were both standing at the edge of an abyss, staring into the unknown. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, skimming the surface of their tangled emotions. I need this job," Emma finally admitted, her voice cracking slightly. "But it's more than that. I want to know you, really know you. We're not so different, are we? You understand what it's like to struggle." His eyes flickered, and the facade of stoic confidence began to crack further. The truth from moments earlier lingered heavily between them. "You think you know me, Emma? I've done things," he said, sounding almost haunted. "Things I'm not proud of." "I understand regret," she replied, taking a cautious step forward. "But it doesn't define you. I see pieces of myself in you, and I can't turn away from that." Mr. Harrington's shoulders slumped slightly, a hint of a weary sigh escaping his lips. "There are decisions to be made about the future of the mansion, my company. People's lives hang in the balance." Emma crossed her arms as she created a boundary from his fears. "Lives are always at stake, they're just more visible for us." She waved a hand toward the luxurious decor that surrounded them, in this environment. "But what about the lives of the people who work here? What about mine, my child?" There was a brief flicker of admiration in his eyes, but it vanished just as quickly. "The more I speak, the more I should remain silent," he murmured, looking down at the polished floor. "Why?" she challenged gently. "Your silence is like a noose. You don't have to hide. What are you so afraid of?" The mood shifted, and the tension in his shoulders gradually eased. "I'm afraid it's all a house of cards. One wrong move, and it collapses. Maybe it's already coming apart." Her heart ached for him, for the man who had reached great heights yet still felt like he stood on shaky ground. "You are stronger than you see. It's a risk either way, but so is the truth. Look at us. We both know how it feels to struggle and fight. Maybe the truth is exactly what you need." The silence that hung between them felt electrified, a delicate balance held within their very breaths. Mr. Harrington's gaze finally met hers. "And if it destroys me? Then let it," Emma replied, emboldened by her own fight for survival. "Because we can rebuild. Together." His eyes softened, uncertainty still present but beginning to melt. "You're determined, aren't you?" "Only for what matters," she said, a light of courage igniting in her chest. "We can add clarity to our paths or choose to stay lost in the dark." "Maybe you're right," he conceded, his voice barely above a whisper. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed loudly, shattering the moment. Mr. Harrington glanced at the screen, and a look of worry crossed his face. "I need to take this. It's about the company, the staff." Emma felt her heart drop. The implications of what might follow made her stomach twist. Before he could step away, she took a breath and said, "Please remember what we talked about and that I'm not just a maid. I have a story too." He nodded slowly, the burden of their shared moment lingering tightly in the air. As he walked away, Emma felt the renewed flame of determination sparking within her, but questions swirled in her head. Would their breakthrough lead them to a better future, or would old shadows pull them back into the darkness they were both trying to escape? In the quiet aftermath, Emma could almost hear the ticking clock, each second ringing louder in her ears. The stakes felt higher now, and as suspense wound tighter around her, she couldn't shake the thought what happened next for them could change everything. Would they both rise together, or would the weight of the past drag them under? Emma stood frozen for a moment after Mr. Harrington walked away, the atmosphere in the expansive mansion pressing in on her. She could almost feel the darkened corners whispering doubts as they clung to her, but she shook them off. She had to focus on the now, on what lay ahead. With each tick of the clock, she felt more resolve forming in her chest. She turned back to the untouched laundry cart in the corner, reminding herself why she was here. The job, the stability, the small hopes wrapped around each task, all led to the greater prize, her child's future. As she began sorting the linens, her mind wandered back to Mr. Harrington. He needed saving, just as much as she did. Both of them danced on fragile strings tethered to their own histories. The hum of voices from the adjoining room pulled her attention. Staff members were gathering for a meeting. Curiosity piqued, she edged closer to glean snippets of conversation. "There's going to be a major shakeup," one of the housekeepers whispered, glancing around nervously as if the walls held ears. "I overheard Mr. Harrington talking about cutting costs. He can't let any more people go." Panic prickled at Emma's skin. If layoffs were coming, it could mean her job was on the line. She needed to find Mr. Harrington again, needed to make him see that cutting back wasn't a solution for the people who depended on this mansion on him. Taking a deep breath, Emma steeled herself. She stepped out of the laundry room, her hands shaking slightly, and navigated through the lavish corridors of the mansion that were now less a haven and more a minefield of uncertainty. As she moved toward the large foyer, she spotted Mr. Harrington standing near a group of executives, his expression tense, his posture stiff. The way he listened to their concerned murmurs, she could see how deeply they affected him. He was a man on the edge, ready to crumble under their weight. "Mr. Harrington," she called out, surprising herself with her own boldness. That he turned, surprise flickering across his features, but it quickly transformed into confusion. "Emma, not now," he implored, his voice low. "It is now or never," she insisted, taking a few steps closer. "You can't let fear dictate what happens next. Don't you see? If you let those decisions create a divide, it'll hurt everyone, people who rely on the mansion and on you." The executives paused, watching the exchange with growing interest. "Emma, please," he said, his voice unraveling just enough to reveal vulnerability. "I can't think of that right now." "Then let me help," she exclaimed, feeling the heat rising to her cheeks. "We can come up with a plan together. You are not alone in this. You don't have to face the darkness by yourself." His gaze flickered, weighing her words with visible struggle. She took another step forward, letting her fight spill into her voice, desperately hoping to break through the shield he had constructed. "Think about the people you care about. Not just the mansion and the company, but the lives behind those walls. Don't sacrifice the few for the many. You can do better than that." For a moment, the silence hung thick, absorbing the emotional tension like a sponge. The executives shifted uneasily, exchanging glances that hinted at their skepticism. Emma could feel their judgment crawling over her. But Mr. Harrington's eyes narrowed, thoughtful now, staring into something deeper than the surface of her plea. "I'll consider it," he finally said, breaking the trance, but the way his shoulders sank told her he felt the weight of her words. Just then, a new voice erupted from the shadows, cutting through the room like lightning. "Are you still holding on to that idea? You've got to be kidding me." Emma turned, her heart racing as she faced the newcomer, a striking woman in an elegant suit, poised and commanding, ready to challenge everything Emma had just built. As tension tightened its grip once more, Emma stood ready to fight for both herself and the man who had, in such a short time, come to mean so much to her. Yet she couldn't shake the sense of impending storm clouds. What had she just unleashed? Would Mr. Harrington heed her words, or would the relentless grip of expectation swallow him whole? Emma felt the cool air around her thicken, as if the room itself were holding its breath. The woman in the elegant suit, with her perfectly coiffed hair and piercing gaze, seemed like an oncoming storm, ready to unleash chaos. Emma's heart thumped loudly in her chest, each beat reminding her of what was at stake, not just her job, but the delicate web of relationships formed in the mansion. "Do you really think he needs your input, Emma?" the woman taunted, a smirk twisting her lips. "You know your place here, don't you?" Emma's heart raced. She could sense the power dynamics shifting in the room. The executives, once mere spectators, now watched with sharpened interest as if they had stumbled into some twisted reality show. She could glean their opinion just by reading the glances exchanged, a mix of pity, scorn, and amusement. Harrington seemed to glance at Emma, gauging her reaction, but she couldn't afford to waver now. Taking a deep breath, she leveled her gaze at the woman, willing her voice to be steady. "I believe that everyone deserves to be heard, regardless of their role. There are lives behind every decision made in this mansion." "Lives?" The woman laughed, a cold sound that reached right into Emma's core. You think you can save them? This is business, dear. And in business, sacrifices are inevitable. The expression on Mr. Harrington's face flickered from concern to something that looked like defensiveness. He stepped toward the woman, shaking his head slightly. Margaret, that's not the kind of leadership I want to uphold. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Did he just defend her? The moment felt electric, like a sudden spark in the dank air, igniting something forgotten inside her. Don't be naive, Harrington, Margaret challenged sharply, eyebrows raised in incredulity. What you need is a firm hand, not an emotional one. We can't afford to keep wasting resources on sentimentality. With that sentiment, she spouted her corporate jargon, each word punctured with the sharpness of a knife. A few of the executives nodded, falling back into the comfort of their usual roles. Emma's stomach churned with unease. Listen, Emma interjected once more, if budget cuts are coming, then let us talk solutions. Let us safeguard the future without tearing each other apart. Mr. Harrington looked between Margaret and Emma, the tension palpable. His eyes widened slightly, as if confronted by a truth he had not fully acknowledged until this moment. Emma's heart raced, a mix of fear and hope battling inside her. Should she press on? Just then, the room fell silent as the housekeeper from earlier peeked into the doorway, worry etched on her face. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but Emma, are you all right? The concern in her voice was clear, yet more unsettling than comforting. Emma shook her head, trying to wave off the anxiety rising in her chest. I'm fine, she assured, but the reality was sketchier. She felt faint, the blood rushing from her head, everything around her blurring momentarily. Then, as if drawn into a slow-motion scene, she watched the chandelier above begin to swim in her vision. The world shifted beneath her, and suddenly she was all too aware of the weight of everyone's eyes on her. She took one step back, her body betraying her resolve, and staggered. Oh no, she whispered, just before everything turned black. When she came to, faces loomed over her, shadows punctuated by the warm sunlight that dared to filter through the enormous windows. Mr. Harrington's worried face was the first thing she registered, and her instinct was to pull away. But he stayed close, murmurings of concern swirling around her like the warmth of a fresh blanket. Emma, are you okay? He said, his voice a whisper to cut through the haze. She blinked, struggling to focus. I didn't want to crumble, she breathed out, her heart still racing. As their eyes met, something profound passed between them. The air buzzed with possibilities, and in that fragile moment, Emma realized it was not just about the mansion or her job anymore. It was about standing tall, no matter the consequences. But would she have the strength to rise again? And more importantly, what new revelations about herself and Mr. Harrington would she uncover from this point forward? Emma blinked again, the world around her coming back into focus, the soft murmur of concern wrapping around her like a vice. She could hear the muffled voices of the executives, a frantic symphony of worries flooded with apologies and questions. Yet, one voice stood out amid the noise: Mr. Harrington. Just take your time, Emma, he said gently, his hand lightly reassuring on her shoulder. The warmth of his touch sent a ripple of comfort through her, grounding her in the chaos swirling in her mind. I'm okay, she finally managed, reluctantly extracting herself from his grasp. Emma pushed herself up into a sitting position, her head swimming with a mix of dizziness and adrenaline. The housekeeper stood nearby, eyes wide with concern, yet knowing she was safe because of the people around her. Perhaps we should take a break. Margaret's tone shifted, dripping with a false sweetness that felt like poison. We wouldn't want our employees to faint during such an important discussion. Some of the executives shifted uncomfortably, and Emma spotted a few narrow glances directed at her, half pity, half judgment. She looked down at her hands, willing her heart to steady, aware that the fight against Margaret was far from over. Emma, Harrington said, bringing her back to him. Focus on breathing one step at a time. Our concerns can wait. He could see the fire sparking in her eyes, and he knew that fire needed to be stoked. "Thank you," she replied, her voice steadying as she focused back on him, grounding herself in that moment. "I don't want to hide anymore. I'm tired of letting others dictate my worth or my voice." The atmosphere in the room crackled unexpectedly. She could sense a few executives shifting in their seats, their expressions morphing into a mix of admiration and contemplation. Did they see her? Truly see her for the first time? "I agree with Emma," Mr. Harrington added, his voice carrying authority. "We can't ignore the human side of our work. This isn't just about numbers and budgets, it's about the people we affect every day." Margaret's face hardened. The smirk from before evaporated, replaced by a steely gaze that shot daggers at him. She pressed her lips into a thin line but said nothing. Perhaps she knew when to retreat, if only temporarily. Emma felt a surge of courage sweeping through her, emboldened by Harrington's support. "We need to face the truth, even if it's uncomfortable. If cuts need to happen, then let us do it thoughtfully. Let us focus on solutions that preserve what truly matters." A small murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Emma lifted her chin, daring herself to see this through. It wasn't just about her job anymore, it was about standing up for those who couldn't champion their own causes. But then, a thought prickled at the back of her mind. What if this moment was the beginning of something larger than she had dared to imagine? Would her voice truly make a difference, not just here but beyond these walls? "Let us not forget the consequences of our decisions," she continued, her voice firm. "I want to ensure that the people, my friends who work alongside me, aren't casualties of corporate warfare. We're all in this together." The room fell into an unusual silence, eyes rotating between Emma and Mr. Harrington. Hope shimmered in the air, but the lurking tension remained. As she glanced up at Harrington, who was gazing at her with a mix of respect and astonishment, Emma realized that this was just the start of a much deeper fight, not just for her job, but for her dignity and the lives that filled the mansion with stories of struggle and triumph. How far would she go to protect what mattered? And what shocking truth awaited to emerge from the tangled web of relationships and duty hidden within these walls? The day had barely begun, but Emma's world was about to change forever. Would she have the courage to embrace it? Emma's heart raced as she looked around the room, sensing the shifting tides in the atmosphere. She could practically taste the fear and uncertainty emanating from her colleagues, but amidst that storm, the hopeful glimmers in some of their eyes anchored her. Each passing moment felt like a portal into uncharted territory. Mr. Harrington gave her a subtle nod, a spark of encouragement. "Together, we can ensure everyone's voice is heard," he said, his tone resonating like a drumbeat in the heavy silence. His confidence poured over her, and she felt a newfound strength bolstering her resolve. Emma knew she needed to harness this energy for the greater good. "Okay," Emma began, her voice steady and firm as she spoke to the group. "If we're going to make a tough choice, let us do it right. It requires honesty and openness." Margaret shifted in her seat, visibly unimpressed. "Honesty doesn't pay the bills, Emma. This company has been hemorrhaging finances for months. We must tighten our grip, even if our hands get a little bloody." The way she spoke, as if casually dismissing the emotions of people could chill a room. Emma bristled, but she pushed through the frustration. "Yes, financial health is crucial. But at what cost? Are we willing to sacrifice our employees for numbers on a spreadsheet? They are not just expendable figures, they are families trying to survive." "You're being naive," Margaret snapped, the heat in her voice rising. The way the executives shifted their gazes was like a spotlight flickering across the stage, illuminating a hard truth. They were stuck between a rock and a hard place. As the discussion dug deeper, new voices began to rise. Some echoed Emma's sentiments, seeing the human aspect of the crisis. Others clung tightly to Margaret's ruthless perspective, driven by fear and insecurity. This clash of ideals was electrifying, igniting something Emma hadn't expected. Throughout the debate, Emma's thoughts flitted back to her own life, the sacrifices her parents had made to provide for their family. It reminded her that life wasn't just about survival but about connection, support, and understanding. As the voices rose and fell, she shared snippets of her own story, weaving it into the fabric of this moment, hoping it would resonate. "I've been where you all are," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "There were nights when I didn't know how my parents would make ends meet. I understand the weight of that fear. That's why this matters." A murmur of agreement bubbled up, a shift that hadn't been there a moment ago. Faces softened, some empathy fluttering in the room like a fragile butterfly. "We need to remember what we're fighting for." Harrington leaned forward, his presence casting a protective aura over her. "If we're willing to put profits over people, we lose more than we gain. We lose the heart of our company." Perhaps it was just a fleeting moment of clarity, but for Emma, it was a breakthrough. Margaret's glare intensified, and Emma braced herself as the tension coiled tighter. "Clearly, you have the room swooned, Emma," she sneered. "But fairy tales don't heal the bottom line." "Maybe it starts with believing in one," Emma shot back, feeling bold. This was only part of the battle. But as the conversation flickered and fanned, with voices overlapping and ideas swirling, she wondered how much would they let her fight? Would they stand up with her? Or would they all fold under the weight of fear that Margaret wielded so expertly? The atmosphere hung thick with anticipation. Emma's gaze landed on Harrington, who appeared both anxious and proud. What would come next? Would her heart-stirring plea fall on deaf ears, or would it ignite a change that resonated deep within these walls? As thoughts danced frantically in her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was close to breaking, a raw truth that might shatter everything. What lay in store for both her and the company? What sacrifices would she need to make to defend those she cared about most? The question lingered heavily as she gathered her breath, bracing for the storm that was surely approaching. Emma felt the tension in the room tighten, like a wire stretched to its breaking point. Her heart raced as she stood there, surrounded by the weight of her colleagues' silence, waiting for someone to respond. It felt as though they were all holding their breath, caught in an invisible web of fear and uncertainty. Margaret's disdainful smile grated at Emma's nerves. "You think your little stories can change anything? We have a business to run, and business requires tough decisions." "Business isn't just about numbers, Margaret," Emma countered, her voice stronger now. "It's about the people behind those numbers. Those families deserve to be heard." A soft gasp rippled through the room. Emma noticed a few heads nodding, the hesitance of their faces giving way to a flicker of hope. But Margaret's eyes were as cold as steel, unyielding. She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed defiantly. "I admire your passion, but passion doesn't pay salaries. You'll have to understand that, Emma." Her voice dripped with condescension. "Maybe not," Emma replied, fighting the urge to raise her voice. "But respect and trust generate loyalty, and that can save a company more than cutbacks ever will." Mr. Harrington leaned forward, his hands pressed together. "Emma has a point. We need to think about our culture, our values. If we forget why we started this company in the first place, what do we really have left?" A murmur of agreement followed, swelling like a tide against Margaret's hard walls. Emma felt adrenaline surging in her veins. This was the moment to push harder, to turn the tide of the conversation. "I urge you all to think about the long-term consequences. How much damage will layoffs do to our company spirit? People will remember how we treated them now, and they'll carry that forward. With respect, Emma, this isn't a therapy session," replied another executive, Timothy, his brow furrowed. "We can't afford to coddle everyone. This is serious business." "Is it serious business?" Emma shot back, the flame of her determination igniting further. "Or is it just fear talking? Fear of the unknown, fear of loss? If we cut people loose, what happens when the next crisis hits? Who will be here to stand by us? Isn't that worth fighting for?" The room grew quiet again, but this time, it was a thoughtful silence. A few eyes betrayed a flicker of realization, as if Emma's words had scraped away the layers of fear wrapped tightly around their minds. Margaret took a deep breath, gathering herself. Then what do you propose? A bunch of motivational speeches? That'll solve everything? Her tone was caustic, but Emma could see her walls cracking just a bit. Let us come together and explore real solutions, Emma suggested, her voice gaining strength. Let us reach out to our teams, involve them in problem solving. Let them know they matter. Harrington's expression shifted to something close to awe. What do you all think? The buzz of conversation resumed, quieter at first. Unseen connections began to form in the flickers of emotion. Emma held her breath, hoping to sustain the momentum she had created. Margaret huffed but remained silent. Time seemed to suspend, a delicate dance of emotions catching the light. Then Jordan, a veteran accountant, raised his hand. I am willing to fight for my team. We could put together a proposal, explore options together. Show that we can innovate instead of cut, he said hesitantly, but with conviction. Emma's heart skipped. They were beginning to rally. A trickle of hope began to bloom in her chest as more voices joined in with tentative support. But before she could savor the victory, Margaret's laughter rang through the space. Well. A revolution in the boardroom, ASNT, that's something? The irony dripped from her words, but Emma noticed a slight tremor in her confidence. Still, it felt ominous. The weight of Margaret's influence still loomed large. Would the tides turn for good? Or were they still fighting an uphill battle with someone who thrived in darkness? As the dialogue continued, Emma felt the edges of uncertainty threatening to creep back in. Together, they were standing taller. But she couldn't shake the feeling that Margaret would soon strike back, armed with her cold facts and ruthless strategies. And so, as Emma caught her breath, a chilling question emerged. What would happen when Margaret unleashed her counterattack? Would they be able to hold their ground? Emma could feel the air around her thicken, almost tangibly, as tension crackled anew. Margaret may have been on the defensive in that moment, but Emma knew her rival would not remain silent for long. With a steely smile, Margaret leaned forward, reclaiming the space. You're right, Emma, she said, her voice sultry and deliberate. People are important. But let us not pretend that businesses thrive on goodwill alone. It takes a brutal reality check sometimes. Tell me, what will you say to our shareholders when profits drop? A chill shot through Emma, a reminder that the stakes were higher than she had allowed herself to dwell on. She took a deep breath, steadying her resolve. Shareholders need to see the bigger picture. If we treat our employees with respect, they will pour their loyalty into our work. Happy employees mean happy customers. It's an investment, Margaret, not a cost. Margaret narrowed her eyes, and Emma caught the flicker of recognition there, a crack finally forming. Investment? Margaret echoed, her voice laced with disbelief. You think we can afford to invest in feelings when we're on the brink of losing it all? Yes, Emma asserted, her heart pounding. We can't afford not to. The room had shifted again, a landscape of whispers punctuating the air. Some of her colleagues leaned forward, intrigued, others seemed more skeptical than ever. But Emma pressed on, riding the wave of her mounting courage. We owe it to our teams to at least try, she said, her heart echoing in her ears. That's how legacies are built. We can innovate. We can pivot. Let us bring everyone to the table. A flash of something like fear rippled across Margaret's face. And what do you expect from these so-called team members? Do you really believe they have the solutions we've failed to find? Why not? Emma challenged. They're living it every day. They know the ins and outs of every single operation. Who better to guide us through this storm? Jordan chimed in again, passion infusing his voice. Emma's right. I've walked alongside my team for years. They know the strengths we haven't even tapped yet. Things I see day to day that could save us. As the conversation blossomed, Emma saw light creeping into the depths of her colleague's eyes. Even Timothy, who had been so dismissive, shifted in his seat. "But the risk," he started, hesitation evident. "The risk is in doing nothing," Emma countered. "If we keep holding on to fear and stay stuck in our silos, we'll fall. But if we embrace our team, let them lead with their ideas, we might just discover a strength we didn't know we had." Margaret visibly bristled now, her carefully crafted image of authority threatened. But Emma could also see a direct challenge in her eyes, a simmering anger, perhaps fear of being overshadowed. Emma knew the room had turned, you could feel it. The waves of uncertainty that had hung over them began to morph into small ripples of hope. Still, Margaret composed herself, drawing her power back like a shroud. "So, what's your little plan?" she sneered. "Hold a staff meeting and hope for miracles?" "Nobody's hoping for miracles, Margaret, just a chance to listen and act," Emma replied coolly. "Everyone has something to contribute. Everyone has a stake in this company, us, the employees, the communities we serve. Together is where the strength lies." Margaret's jaw tightened, but Emma stood firm in the face of that confrontation. This was her moment to fight for what she believed. As the discussion kept rolling, Emma realized this wasn't just about the company. It was bigger. It was about hearts and homes, futures and families. And somewhere in that passionate back and forth, amid the rising voices, a sense of community began to emerge. With another glance toward Margaret, Emma felt renewed determination flood her. They could steer this ship, change the course, but what would Margaret reveal next? Would she unleash her power or find a way to knock their growing coalition back to square one? Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was still ahead. Emma kept her focus on Margaret, knowing this moment could shift everything. The tension in the room was palpable. She could almost taste the anticipation in the air, a blend of fear and hope. "I understand the concern," Emma said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "But think about what we've accomplished before. Every innovative leap we made was fueled by our teams. When we empower them, we aren't just investing in feelings, we're investing in tangible results." Margaret's expression darkened, the fire in her eyes burning brighter. "And when those results don't come? When enthusiasm can't pay the bills? What then, Emma?" "Then we regroup," Emma replied, a hint of resolve breaking through the uncertainty. "We assess. We listen harder. The truth is in the trenches with those who do the work, not just the corner offices. We have to trust them." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some looked pensive, others hopeful. Her colleagues were beginning to recognize that this wasn't just a corporate discussion, it was personal. Emma saw them searching for something they hadn't felt in years: possibility. Jordan raised his hand, his voice now urgent. "What if we started right now?" he suggested. "We could schedule a brainstorming session, gather everyone from every department and let them voice their ideas. We use a platform where every thought counts. They feel seen." Timothy nodded slowly, a flicker of enthusiasm in his gaze. "We've had those before, haven't we? But maybe we weren't listening as we should." "Yes." Emma felt fire in her belly. "We need to not just hear but act on what they say. That could be a catalyst for change. If we want to shift our trajectory, we have to embrace everyone. Put their ideas into real action." Margaret leaned back, a disapproving smirk crinkling her mouth. "You really believe all this noise can help us rise from the ashes? You're selling them a dream, Emma." Emma squared her shoulders. "And what are you selling, Margaret? Fear? Corporate indifference? Our people deserve more than just a paycheck. They deserve a stake in the future of this company. We can build that together." An elderly voice chimed in unexpectedly from the back. "She's right. I've seen countless companies falter on the foundation of neglecting their staff." Emma spun around, surprised. It was Mr. Whitaker, an old-timer from accounting, known for keeping his head low. A ripple of encouragement swept through the room as more colleagues nodded in agreement, silently rallying around Emma. Margaret's facade started to crack, her steel exterior faltering for the first time. "So, we're actually going to proceed with this ridiculous idea? Gather the masses for a pity party?" Emma took a deep breath and transformed that turmoil into compassion. "The empathy we extend could heal wounds that have festered for too long, Margaret. It's not just about business, it's about humanity. A chance to truly connect, to revive our spirit." Hope clashed with doubt across the faces in the room. Emma locked eyes with Margaret. It was no longer just a corporate battle. It felt deeply personal, a fight for a brighter future and higher purpose. "Do we want to be known as a company that dismisses its people?" Emma asked, her voice trembling but firm. "Or as one that stands with them, together at the brink of success?" The silence that followed was thick. Emma's heart raced, the whispers of uncertainty now mingling with something else, a flicker of solidarity. She could sense their yearning for change. Margaret, cornered by the weight of the moment, suddenly straightened. Something shifted within her, a moment of contemplation, perhaps. Emma held her breath. Could this finally be the turning point? But just then, the doors swung open, cutting through the tension, and in walked an unexpected figure. Who could it be? What would they bring to this charged atmosphere? Emma's heart raced anew, sensing that the real challenge was just beginning. As the doors swung open, all eyes turned toward the figure stepping into the room. It was a woman, tall and confident, dressed in a business suit that exuded authority. This was Ivy, the company's chief operating officer, known both for her strategic brilliance and ruthless pragmatism. The moment she entered, the air shifted, tension mounting as questions bubbled beneath the surface. "Apologies for the interruption," Ivy announced, her voice calm yet commanding. "I was informed that there had been some heated discussions regarding company strategy." The executives shuffled uncomfortably, their earlier confidence wavering as they recognized the gravity of her presence. Emma locked eyes with Mr. Harrington, seeking his support. He met her gaze with an encouraging nod, his earlier support anchoring her as she prepared to stand her ground. "We've been diving into some critical issues," she began, the weight of what was unfolding pressing on her shoulders. "This isn't just about cutbacks and profits. It's about the people behind this company, the lives that are intertwined in its success or failure." The room held its breath, and Ivy's gaze settled on Emma. She seemed to analyze her, her brow furrowing slightly as if gauging the depth of Emma's passion. "And what exactly do you propose?" Ivy asked, her tone almost curious. Emma felt the courage swelling in her chest, the support she had felt from her fellow employees fueling her resolve. "We need to open a dialogue not just amongst our executives, but with everyone who works here. We should invite our teams to share their insights, ideas, and sentiments. They know the company better than anyone." Margaret scoffed, ready to shoot back a rebuttal, but Ivy raised her hand, silencing her. "Go on, Emma," she encouraged. "We have the opportunity to transform the culture of this company," Emma continued, her heart racing but her voice steady. "If we genuinely invest our time and resources into our people, we can cultivate loyalty and innovation that will push us into a thriving future." As Emma spoke, Ivy's eyes sparkled with intrigue. "And what about the shareholders? What will they say when they see potential loss in profits?" "They would see stability and commitment. A company that cares about its people ultimately drives success. We save costs in turnover if our employees feel valued. Together, we can create a roadmap for our future," Emma replied, feeling strength building with each word. The others began to murmur in agreement, their confidence swelling alongside Emma's conviction. Ivy turned to the executives with a slight smirk. This wasn't her first encounter with one of Emma's bold moves. "You heard her. Do you think this plan holds merit?" Timothy glanced around, biting his lip. "The cost of keeping morale high can outweigh the savings from layoffs. I say we give Emma's idea a chance." One by one, others nodded. Jordan, a few of the junior associates, even Margaret, a little miffed but grudgingly accepting this unexpected truth. Ivy's gaze sprouted a hint of admiration. "Alright then, let us flesh this out. I'll give you a week, and we'll gather feedback from every level of the company. But I want you to understand," her voice turned serious, commanding, "this is a trial run. You'll need to prove it works." Otherwise, the gravity of her words landed hard, but Emma didn't flinch. "Understood," she replied, the flicker of determination igniting her further. As Ivy turned to leave, the tension in the room dissolved into something lighter, something infused with hope. Mr. Harrington stepped forward beside Emma. "I'm proud of you," he said, genuine warmth shining in his eyes. "We couldn't have done this without you leading the charge." Joy bubbled inside Emma, peeling away layers of doubt. She smiled back, feeling the weight of everything they had fought for settling into something positive. This wasn't just their victory, it was a win for everyone whose lives were intertwined within these walls. "We've only just begun," Emma said, looking at the team surrounding her. United in purpose, they had a chance to reshape not only their company but also the narrative of their own lives. She felt her heart swell with possibility, and then, like a crack of thunder, Margaret finally spoke again, her voice low and sharp. "Let us see how far you get," she warned, a blend of skepticism and begrudging respect. Emma met her gaze, unflinching. "With every step forward, we'll prove what's possible." With that declaration, the room erupted in quiet applause, affirmations whispering through the crowd. And in that moment, it was not just the hushed commotion of staff rallying behind a visionary idea, but a potent reminder of their collective strength and igniting force of empathy, resilience, and possibility. Emma had bloomed like spring in winter, blossoming right before their eyes. As they left the meeting, the air felt lighter, charged with newfound energy, every step echoing their commitment to embrace change. "I can't wait to see where this leads us," Mr. Harrington said beside her, excitement blooming in his voice. "Me too," Emma replied with a radiant smile. And as they moved forward together, it was clear that there was no turning back. They had stepped out of the shadows and into a future they would define as their own, side by side, hearts full of hope. Now, this is where you come in. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these stories alive. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this ending. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Together, let us inspire change and support each other.